Itachi, the child genius of the Uchiha, and Nagato, the second coming of the six paths and the child of prophecy. What's going on, guys? TG or ThunderGod here, and today I'm talking about two of the strongest characters in the series who play a significant role, narratively speaking, in developing Naruto and Sasuke, with this duo even being described as the strongest of the Edo Tensei before these guys were summoned. And due to this, there's always been a lot of debate with Itachi versus Pain. But this also extends into their Edo Tensei forms, with their respective fan bases being at constant battle over which juggernaut is stronger or would come out in a fight, with there being no real common consensus on the matter. So today we'll be looking at Edo Nagato versus Edo Itachi exclusively and determining who would come out on top. With that being said, make sure to like and subscribe if you're new here, and let's get into the video. Now, I'm gonna come out and say this right before we get into the discussion. I want to make this very clear. I believe these two are very relative. The series implies it. The statements remarking them and their respective visual prowesses imply it. So I think this is one of those topics that Kishimoto left up in the air, and for good reason, kind of like the Chunin exam. So I kind of want to preface the video with that. Onto the discussion. Now, starting off, before we kind of get into this whole matchup, I do want to talk about gray-haired Nagato, as he's a bit weirder to discuss, especially with all the factors surrounding his original fight. So let's kind of talk about him. And in this, he actually performs pretty well against Naruto and Co. He's able to catch Naruto, the guy with the ability to sense evil intent and hatred, off guard with his summoned Rinnegan chameleon, which is able to, cloak itself like a chameleon. This is also unable to be sensed by Naruto or B. This same chameleon would then go on to catch Naruto again, even with Naruto being aware of its presence on the battlefield, which is just absurd. Nagato would blow the duo back with the almighty push, dashing behind B. There's a little difference between the anime and manga of this feat. In the manga, Nagato appears behind B, and it seems like B stops himself and propels himself forward with his hand, whereas in the anime, Nagato blatantly evades version 2 cloak B. He would then go on to react to the same killer B, absorbing all of his version 2 cloak completely off, which again is absurd, as someone like Hisame, the guy known for absorbing chakra as his gimmick, could only shave off the cloaks one version at a time. This is also a reaction feat, as if it weren't, Nagato would have gotten torn in half by B's lariat, as characters like Sasuke and Kisame are getting their chests caved open while getting tagged by it, even in regressed forms. While he performs these really great feats, I believe at this stage it's pretty objective to say he wouldn't be above Edo Itachi, as the feats he performed aren't outside Itachi's own ability to perceive and deal with the same attacks. We'll talk about Itachi a little later, but we do have a little reference for Itachi with this Nagato. We see Itachi is able to tag Nagato with the Matarasu after he frees himself from the Edo Tensei control. Now, this is a really contentious and weird feat, as realistically Nagato should be able to absorb the Amaterasu with Gakido. Why he doesn't immediately is really weird. Instead, for the Edo Tensei auto counter to let him burn and then push it off when Kabuto takes controls. The fact that Kabuto had to take the reins and actively make Nagato do this doesn't help either. There is a possibility that Nagato was resisting the Edo Tensei like others had done before, and he let himself burn, which I definitely think is possible, although every time this has been the case, Kabuto has explicitly noted it. So this is a little debatable. Something that would support this argument, however, is that the Naruto Volume 58 back describes Kabuto losing power over the stronger members of the Immortal Core, including Nagato's Pain. This argument would more than likely extend to Itachi as well on some level, but it does add a bit of consistency to the whole Nagato bit. Honestly, it doesn't make too much sense as a whole, as it displays Kabuto using the Rinnegan better than its owner, who had been used to it its entire life, which makes no sense. I do believe the takeaway here, however, is that Itachi's Mangekyo attacks are generally above what gray-haired Nagato is capable of dealing with, at least speed-wise. I don't think this feat necessarily matters either, as Itachi has just displayed better feats and is more comparable to red-haired Nagato compared to gray-haired, even looking past this fight. But I just figured I'd address the gray-haired stuff, since I do think there is a bit of debate there. It also doesn't help that the Rinnegan itself does have a bit of absurd sensory capabilities. For example, even Nagato was able to perceive that Itachi was kneading the chakra into his eye and was preparing to use a jutsu. So again, the speed just should be greater at this point. Next up, we have Edo, or red-haired Nagato. Now, Edo Nagato with his red hair is a lot more blatant when he's amped up on version 2B's chakra. He's able to quickly overwhelm QB Naruto and base Killer B, but he also should scale above version 2B via his gray-haired feats. He also has no issues reacting to them, with his field of vision being enhanced via Rinnegan summons, demonstrating the ability to stack Rinnegan abilities with a noted speed and power difference by Naruto compared to when he was using the Paths of Pain. Itachi then comes in, slicing off Nagato's arm, restraining Naruto and B, along with piercing the eyes of his summons, making it so he no longer has that enhanced view. Itachi having an easier time here as Nagato/Kabuto is preoccupied with Naruto/B. The manga and anime depict this scene very differently. In the anime, Nagato actually does see Itachi coming and still doesn't avoid the attack, whereas in the manga, he doesn't due to his vision being cut off and just doesn't see Itachi coming. So the anime actually paints Itachi as a bit more impressive in that regard, but you know, it still shouldn't be like a crazy feat considering Nagato was preoccupied at that point. And the follow-up to this is Nagato unleashing the Chubaku Tensei. Again, there's some minor differences, as in the manga, he releases the jutsu literally as Itachi finishes moving away from Nagato and Naruto and B hit the ground as they're removing their restraints, while Itachi's movements at that moment had come to a halt. Whereas in the anime, Naruto and B had no restraints on them, and Itachi and Ko had a conversation on the ground instead of like Naruto talking as he lands. You might ask why these micro changes matter. Well, they give us a bit of insight into Itachi's speed in comparison to Nagato, with the anime making Itachi seem a tad more impressive, with the manga showing the fight a lot more fast-paced. Kabuto then unleashes the Chubaku Tensei, which I will cover momentarily when discussing the ability section, but essentially sees Naruto being Itachi and figures Chubaku Tensei is his best option in this situation. They blow it up and the fight ends, with Itachi stabbing Nagato with the Totsuka blade through the smoke. Now, this does outline a big gripe I have with people discussing this matchup, with them saying it took Naruto, B, and Itachi to defeat Nagato, which just isn't true. It took the three of them to destroy and eclipse Nagato's strongest attack, which they do scale above with their combined might, which is a big difference, but we'll talk more about that in the Chubaku Tensei part of the fight. So essentially, Nagato should scale pretty objectively above QB Naruto, KCM1, and version 2B in just his raw stats. This isn't talking about techniques or like how they would interact with a bunch of abilities. Again, we're going to cover that a little bit. So it's pretty plain to see on his end. Let's kind of look at where Itachi's at in regards to his general stats. Now, when looking at Edo Itachi's a little weird to look at during this fight, as he's throwing hands with Naruto and base B with his regular Sharingan out. Not his Mangekyo, meaning he would be suppressed here. But what a lot of people won't add in is that Naruto's more than likely suppressed as well, as he wants to relay what's happened with Sasuke to Itachi and have a conversation about the future of Sasuke. So essentially, Itachi's suppressed and can also match Naruto, who's suppressed. You could still say he's also confidently above base B, however, as when this duo resign themselves to taking down the Edo Tensei and start fighting again, B is not able to take Itachi down at all, with Itachi comfortably dodging him. For anyone who might say that Itachi not having his Mangekyo out doesn't make a difference, it does at the very least when regarding his perception capabilities. You can also see a bit of a threat level when Itachi fights this duo in Sage Mode Kabuto, where he's forced to have his Mangekyo active to keep pace with Sasuke and deal with Kabuto's movement. Even with the duo periodically resorting back to their base Sharingan, they immediately flare up their Mangekyo when combat starts again. And what's ironic here is that there's actually a very blatant display of this as Sasuke deactivates his Mangekyo in the fight against Kabuto. And because he does this, maybe you could say he did it to conserve chakra, he almost gets taken out by inorganic animation. Only Itachi's actually able to react because he has his Mangekyo out, whereas Sasuke has his base Sharingan out. So in the context of this fight, actually, I would make the argument Nagato's more impressive, as he's like comfortably above Naruto and B, whereas Itachi, while suppressed, also scales to them while suppressed. So we have the Itachi suppressed, showing a good performance against suppressed Naruto and B, and Nagato having a good performance against a more serious Naruto and B. From this fight alone, Nagato does display a better showing in the department of pure movement and reaction. The issue is Itachi goes on to fight with Sasuke and show better showings against someone of Sage Mode Kabuto's caliber. Kabuto is one of the big three narrative juggernauts in the war, described on the back of volume 61 of the Naruto manga that it would take both Itachi and Sasuke to stand a chance against him. Itachi being very comparable to his Kabuto, keeping pace throughout the bout and keeping pace with Sasuke with his Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. This Sasuke should be far above B and Naruto that Nagato had fought, being more comparable to Naruto with a far more mastery of the Kyuubi's chakra and linking with Kurama as a whole. Even if you were to say Sasuke got stronger via his hatred, he should still be very relative to the version of himself that fights alongside Naruto, whereas the Naruto that fights Nagato is nowhere near the level of the Naruto that fights alongside Sasuke. Please look at my Kyuubi Naruto video for more accurate depiction of why this Naruto is so much stronger. But long story short, that Naruto has much more access to the Kurama's chakra and has much more experience controlling that chakra, so it's pretty blatant in that front. So Itachi should take a slight edge in terms of like the movement category. And I'll say this too, even if you were to say like Nagato and Itachi were relative in their stats, this being basic movement reaction, it doesn't matter, as Nagato does need his summons to combat Itachi with his Mangekyo out, as if he didn't, he would have just sensed and evaded him without his summons in the original fight. So this is consistent with the fight we saw in the show. Nagato being more of a juggernaut that can enhance his perception and stack ludicrous jutsu, whereas Itachi is more of a movement-based fighter, at least as an Edo, with a lot of instant takedown abilities. So essentially, we don't know how Itachi would have interacted with Nagato in a one-on-one encounter had Nagato had his summons out, the King of Hell, all of that stuff, enhancing his perception ability, because Itachi did use the fact that Nagato was fighting Naruto and B to his advantage to attack the summons with the from their blind spots. So Itachi should have an edge on this Nagato without his summons. With the summons, it's a little harder to quantify, but that kind of gets into the ability section of the fight, which is really where the bread and butter, because this fight gets crazier the more we get into it. So now that we outlined like their general stats and like how I see this, let's discuss how their abilities match up with each other, because this is really where we're going to get into it. So there's a plethora of abilities to go over. I'll start with Itachi, since a lot of his abilities are generally a lot quicker, along with him using them at the beginning of confrontations like Genjutsu extended over to Tsukuyomi. Now, I see a lot of people fundamentally misconstrued Genjutsu, and that not all Genjutsu function the same. For starters, I see a lot of people misinterpret Jiraiya's explanation of Genjutsu to you need to control your opponent's chakra flow to place them under Genjutsu, which is not true. The chakra flow disruption comes as a result of controlling the opponent's senses. A chakra flow is not required for Genjutsu, as the tail beasts are lumps of chakra with no chakra network that can be controlled. We also see other examples of Gengetsu's clan placing shinobi under Genjutsu by manipulating steam particles and light. Why am I bringing any of this up? We see that the passive pain are corpses filled with Nagato's chakra via Rinnegan rods controlling them, and they are susceptible to illusions and Genjutsu, with Jiraiya's Genjutsu being an example of Genjutsu that doesn't inherently disrupt the opponent's chakra to control them. There's an argument for the Rinnegan having a layer of Genjutsu resistance, and while I may grant you that, we've seen characters like the Raikage who, on top of having an absurd amount of chakra, also have a lightning cloak shielding him, making it so it's difficult to place him under Genjutsu, since you'd have to control or keep his chakra flow disrupted with your own chakra. And this is kind of why the Nine Tails being controlled is such a feat. Controlling that much chakra with your own is absurdly difficult, and this does extend to the Raikage. For the Rinnegan's case, we can look at a few examples. The obvious being Jiraiya using the demonic illusion Toad confrontation chant, which paralyzed the nerves and minds of the three paths of pain. Very similar to even the peak of the normal Sharingan, which is complete immobilization as shown by Sasuke. There's also the fact that Kakashi was able to place Obito under Genjutsu despite Obito having a Rinnegan in his right eye, with the Sharingan in his left making it easier to escape any Genjutsu. So while you can argue the Rinnegan should have a layer of Genjutsu resistance with the examples listed in the general layout of Genjutsu discussed, Nagato should be susceptible to techniques like Tsukuyomi, which is a huge issue for him in this fight. Even like I mentioned the Raikage, right? The Raikage can fall under Genjutsu, as a stronger Genjutsu from a stronger Madara, where he forced him to look into his eyes, was able to shut the Raikage down. So Tsukuyomi is going to be a huge issue for him in this fight, as he'll get mentally destroyed almost instantly. Kakashi even notes how even if you know how to escape the technique, it doesn't matter due to the nature of Itachi controlling time and space. So Tsukuyomi should be able to work on the Rinnegan, even with the potentially working on the summons that lead back to Nagato, which would be an extra eye for Itachi to look into. The only example of like Rinnegan resisting Genjutsu is Sasuke's Rinnegan resisting the infinite Tsukuyomi, which is not a good example, as that's a, first and foremost, that's like a 6-paths Rinnegan gifted to him by Hagoromo, but that also was an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan before it evolved, whereas Nagato simply just has a regular Rinnegan. Sasuke's Tomoe Rinnegan even resorting back to a regular Rinnegan only when he's fatigued, so it should be pretty clear that his Rinnegan is above the base Rinnegan. Next up, we have the Susanoo and Totsuka Blade, which are also extremely effective against Nagato. I'll start with the Susanoo. And I'll say this, I don't think it can be absorbed via the Rinnegan. It's never shown to be the case, not in Shippuden or even Boruto, where ninjutsu is getting absorbed left and right from all these opponents with their karma marks or their Rinnegan respectively. And the way I'll put this, if Nagato / Kabuto could have absorbed it when Itachi dragged his arm through the ground, he would have, especially since he doesn't need to put his hands up to absorb ninjutsu. The Totsuka Blade is an obvious GG, just like we saw in the original fight. Now, There's a little bit debate over Itachi versus Nagato, especially using the events by the end of the fight. Essentially, Itachi's Susanoo is covered in smoke. The Rinnegan can't see through the smoke and, smoke bombs respectively. Itachi jabs the Totsuka blade through the smoke, piercing Nagato. A lot of Itachi supporters will use this as a way to say Itachi speed blitz GG, as the Totsuka blade goes through the smoke straight to Nagato, with Nagato being some distance away from the cloud, meaning he couldn't react to the Totsuka blade as it came out of the cloud. First and foremost, again, I'll say it, this is Nagato without his enhanced vision. There also have been arguments the way Itachi used the blade as more of a straight jab instead of a full swing, which made it harder for Nagato to react, thus not making indicative of how it would go without the cloud. It's a little difficult to judge off this feat, but I'll say this. All this would mean is that Itachi has a bit of an edge against Nagato without his summons, which, I kind of implied before. This also gives no indication of how Nagato would react to his summons, aiding his perception abilities, which is a substantial difference on his perception abilities. In regards to Itachi just jamming the Totsuka blade, though, I do think that's actually very in character, as he does it against Orochimaru. He only swings it when he's destroying the giant Hydra, but the minute he sees Orochimaru himself, he actually just, kind of picks at him and just shoots his sword straight. So it does seem in character for him to use it as like a just straight jab, as that's the intention. He doesn't need to make an overarching movement. He doesn't have to make all these unnecessary movements. He can just go straight into the opponent with his superior speed. So it's still very in character for him to do that again. He also has a Matarasu, which was shown extremely effective against Nagato's summons, even against, the constantly replicating dog, which Naruto just drops a Rasen Shuriken on and it did nothing. This also makes it easier for Itachi to deal with summons, as he can simply drag his sight line across to wherever Nagato is, even if Nagato's like moving on top of his bird. Making it so Itachi does have a good way to kind of crowd control Nagato's summons if it comes to that. But other than that, maybe you could argue Itachi does like his subtle genjutsu with his finger and forces Nagato into more of a standard genjutsu. But a lot of his moves actually do get negged by the Rinnegan. His basic fire style is not going to matter. He does have some decent Suiton or water release, but again, that's not going to matter too much either. The Rinnegan hard counters any of that. His fire style coded kunai or shuriken aren't going to really matter. Essentially, Itachi's just going to be like this mobile unit inside the Susanoo that's kind of making moves, which again is consistent with what happened in the original fight. Next up, we have the Rinnegan abilities. Now, starting off, we could talk about Almighty Push and Pull, which respectively wouldn't be the most effective against Itachi, as even if he isn't in his Susanoo at the start and gets pulled in, he'll be able to form it while getting pulled. The Susanoo itself then will be getting dragged towards Nagato, which is not ideal. Some might say, well, shouldn't the technique pull Itachi out of the Susanoo avatar? This isn't the case, as we've seen the technique move wherever the user does. The only instance of someone getting pulled out is Madara, and this doesn't work as Madara's Susanoo is being held down while Gaara pulled him out. Meaning, had it not been held down, it just would have been pulled with Madara. A better example of this is maybe Madara's Susanoo getting hit by Hirodora, and even though Madara is getting blown back, the technique is also getting blown back with him. So I can't see the technique being extremely useful on its own. Nagato definitely needs to combine it with another technique. If he does catch Itachi lacking though, it can be coupled with Ningendo or Shirado, especially if Itachi gets grabbed during the fight. He's going to get his chakra absorbed, blown back, or his soul snatched. I also say too, this technique will be pivotal defensively speaking too. It's going to allow Nagato to kind of repel a lot of techniques Itachi throws, like his basic fire style or even some of his Susanoo techniques like the Asaka Magatana beads. Especially since this is the guy, even in lower form, is just casually repelling the Rasen Shuriken. So, it's definitely going to take some higher level ninjutsu from Itachi to kind of get through this. Or maybe he has to force Nagato to use the technique to create an opening. I mentioned Ningendo, but realistically, Itachi gets folded by this technique. It will work 100%. It's a valid win condition. Can be combined with Bansho Tenin for a GG. Itachi has no resistance to it. The only reason Naruto could hold his souls because he had a similar experience with the Nine Tails more recently. The Rinnegan summons aren't too useful here in the sense that Itachi hard counters them. He can honestly just throw Yasaka Magatana beads to destroy any of them that aren't the replicating dog, as even basic kunai could pierce the eye and surrounding area of the Chameleon and King of Hell. This is also assuming the summons have somewhat relative durability, which, may be elite, but we have summons like the Bull getting blown away from Sage Mode Jiraiya's attacks, or the Chameleon getting burned and sliced open from Manpa, or Jiraiya taking the crab out with his Art of the Raging Lion's Mane. Regardless, this technique wasn't even that effective against Itachi in the first place, since he just lit 2 summons up instantly, so there shouldn't be a reason he can't do it again, or even just throw, again, Yasaka Magatana beats at the summons. The issue with Itachi against the Rinnegan summons in this case is that he's going to have a lot harder time taking them out, as they're going to be more eyes locked on him, with Nagato being able to interact a lot earlier in the start of the fight. Like, for example, right, Itachi's able to hit the Chameleon only because it made itself visible. If the chameleon actually stayed invisible, it's very possible Itachi wouldn't have detected it. I think he still would be able to via like the Sharingan, able to detect chakra. And the Deidara fight showed us that even if it's not visible, basic Sharingan users can detect like just large clouds of chakra. So Itachi also would not have an easier time taking down these summons. We also have Chibaku Tensei. Now, this is a controversial topic. For some reason, honestly speaking, it's pretty self-explanatory the way this scene plays out. Basically, Nagato initiates the jutsu while he's regenerating along with Naruto and B freeing themselves from their restraints. The way the scene plays out, he actually initiates this jutsu before B and Naruto drop out of their restraints. He actually like initiates it while his arm's regenerating, which Itachi does notice. Like, he's the one to know like Nagato's preparing a technique. Now, it should go without saying. I'm going to just start off with this. Itachi himself is not breaking out of Chibaku Tensei, or is he's not breaking it himself. This scene does not give any indication, nor do any of Itachi's moves. He says the trio need to unleash their strongest long-range ninjutsu, in which he proceeds to throw his triple Yasaka Magatana beats, along with a Rasen Shuriken and Bijou Bomb, making it clear that the three attacks all scale up over the Chibaku Tensei only when combined. Now, some people may say Itachi can make more beads. He makes 4 when he fights Kabuto. And while this is true, it's pretty clear that 3 is the limit in terms of a concentrated attack, as any more beads will cause the chakra holding them together to snap. You even see this with Madara, right? When he uses the Yasaka Magatana beads, he has this long strand, and even then they're in groups of 3, along with him using a group of 3 held together against Tsunade. So while it could be said it's possible, it seems far more consistent that this is the limit in terms of what can be held together. You may also say that Itachi can just throw 3 of the 3 connected beads before the jutsu is completed. However, he notes the attacks need to be simultaneous and the need to move at the same speed. So throwing them one after another does not work, as the rubble will just kind of repair the damage and take the place of any destroyed debris. So it is ideal, and honestly, if he could have done it solo, then he would have. I've heard it said that this whole situation was to teach Naruto about teamwork, but A, Itachi had no clue at that point Naruto was becoming isolated due to his strength until hearing him talk about taking care of the war by himself. And B, that doesn't mean anything previously said was untrue, as they're not mutually exclusive. So Chibaku Tensei being beyond what Itachi can deal with is very consistent. You'd have to make so many mental gymnastics to really say otherwise. I also want to bring up the idea that Nagato might not be able to summon the Geto statue as an Edo Tensei, as there is a definitive difference between an Edo Tensei Rinnegan and a real Rinnegan, as like kind of Madara displays. We don't know for sure, as we have not seen any other Edo Tensei with a Rinnegan, but we also know like Madara doesn't bother to try and summon the Geto statue at all until he gets his real Rinnegan back, even though like he knows it's on the other side of the battlefield. But for the sake of the discussion, right, I will give it to Nagato. And again, the Geto statue is such a problem for Itachi, as it's extremely durable. It's like tanking 6-gate guy, Raikiri Kakashi, and the 8-tails, just giving it the business with absolutely no external damage. It basically makes light of one of the shinobi companies all by itself. It can nuke the battlefield. It's honestly questionable how Itachi would even deal with this. And keep in mind, Nagato is going to be fighting alongside the Geto statue as it's rampaging. So, again, this is just a huge issue for Itachi. He doesn't have too much to deal with it. Even if you were to say, like, he Yadamirs up, right? Well, when the Geto statue, like, nukes the battlefield, which, you know, I will say is fair, he's not going to be able to obtain any offensive presence with the Geto statue rampaging. Along with it being even questionable if he'd be able to damage or take it down. I will say I don't see Nagato being able to use the Soul Dragon technique that he does against Hanzo, as he needs to like shave off his life force to use it. Maybe he can like do it and like his life force will get sapped again as an Edo Tensei. I don't know, but I don't think this technique matters too much, as Hanzo himself is able to body flicker out of it. And Itachi should be able to Yadamir defense it, so it doesn't really seem like it's just going to go through with Susanoo or anything like that. Nagato also might only be able to summon the partial version of the Geto statue, as we only see him summon that version when he's fighting Hanzo. He might not be able to summon it like fully mobile as Obito does. This also may be a result of the Geto statue having the chakra of the first 1 through 7 tailed beast, which making it stronger. So it also kind of does depend which version of the Geto statue in my eyes you give Nagato. If you do give him the impartial one though, it does become a lot less powerful, and it's really just something for Nagato to be by to like help him out in the fight. Now, let's kind of talk about these duos win conditions. Itachi's win conditions are a lot simpler, as he's going to be using his Genjutsu and superior mobility to Nagato with the Susanoo to create opening for the Totsuka Blade to seal Nagato. This can be in any stage of the fight, but Itachi will have to balance dealing with Nagato's respective techniques and summons while fighting Nagato himself. Itachi does have an advantage of just staying in his Susanoo indefinitely, making it very difficult for Nagato to execute one of his win conditions, while also being very equipped to handle Nagato's expansive arsenal of Rinnegan abilities. Nagato requires a bit more setup in his case, as he'll need to enhance his field of view with summons to compensate for his lack of mobility. Even Kabuto notes this. But if he can accomplish this, he'll gain a lot more momentum, as Itachi will be forced to draw his attention off of Nagato himself and deal with everything getting thrown at him. Then you can see a lot more combinations that could lead to his W, with Nagato essentially just trying out abilities until he kind of realizes, okay, nothing's really working. I'm going to use Chibaku Tensei on Itachi. And this is just assuming he doesn't Bacho Tenin into like grabbing Itachi, which he's either just going to absorb his chakra dry as an Edo Tensei or just soul snatch him. And he can like fully deplete his chakra supply, as the Edo Tensei more so have. Like, they basically have a constantly replenishing meter of chakra, not just an unlimited source. They actually can run out of chakra. It just comes back over time. Nagato should be able to overwhelm Itachi with all his various animal summons, King of Hell, Ghetto Statue, along with Nagato himself fighting and being mobile on top of his summons if he does choose to go that way. He'll have ample opportunity to engage one of his win conditions, but the most prominent one being Chibaku Tensei. The way I see this fight going, when taking everything discussed into account along with looking at the fighting style of the two combatants, Itachi has a distinct advantage in the early to mid fight, with Nagato having a distinct advantage in the mid to end fight. This is due to the nature of the characters' arsenals and how they fight. This also doesn't mean they can't win in earlier or later versions of the fight. For example, like Nagato could just Chibaku Tensei off rip and Itachi would be in horrible position. Or Itachi could buy Nagato's summons and stab him and end the fight in the mid phase. These odds are more so just leaning into their fighting styles. Itachi having a lot more instant takedowns like Genjutsu Tsukuyomi into Totsuka Blade, coupled with analyzing inside the Susanoo, compared to Nagato, who will require summons to compensate for his lack of mobility, which will take some time to get out, but once they are out, Nagato is going to have a distinct advantage and be able to kind of play around with Itachi and see what works. There is a degree of like me kind of analyzing their fighting styles, because honestly you could just really say like, okay, they start out the fight with this or that and that person wins, and I can only make so many conclusions empirically speaking. So again, I think, you know, it really is a debatable topic. It's a very good topic. It's very interesting. I think you can argue either or. I just think these fighters kind of lean into these phases of the fight via their arsenal and fighting styles. So rather than A character greater than B character, I think this character and like where they're at kind of lean into these phases of the fight. I'm taking in their general stats, arsenal, and fighting styles. So let me know your guys' thoughts. Agree, disagree, why, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.